Hi, I'm Ryan Daws, editor at TechForge Media, and with me today is Boris Cipot, the senior sales engineer at Synopsys' Software Integrity group. So Boris, you're a cybersecurity veteran with experience not just at Synopsys, but also F-Secure and Avira and many others. I also hear in the grapevine that you specialize in open source. So are you concerned about the growing number of vulnerabilities being introduced through open source libraries?
That is one of the problems of open source, right? So open source should be one thing that boosts our development and gives us, let's say, like this competitive edge towards others. However, many times I see that open source components are used that are already old or have vulnerabilities that are not, let's say, like this, hard to fix. However, they are not fixed even before or when released into the public.
The European Union Agency for Cybersecurity recently published a report predicting a fourfold increase in software supply chain attacks in 2021 compared to 2020. How can developers counter the increasing number and seriousness of such supply chain attacks?
So supply chain attacks happen mostly in the supply chain, right? The problem of this supply chain is not only the software, but also many times the hardware on which this software is delivered, right? Mm-hmm. Another point that we have to look at is, let's say like this, for example, what kind of software you are using in your environment, in your network. And when we say software, many companies focus only on, I don't know, the operating system itself. However, not much points are put on the software that is installed on this operating systems. And one other aspect, if I now go into the details, and as we know, the devil is in the details, just imagine the browser itself. Everybody focuses on the browser. However, nobody focuses on the plugins that are installed on these browsers. And those are many times the points of attacks that are also used. So when looking at the supply chain, we need to look at each and every segment that we bring into our company, starting from development, of course, where we need to check what we are developing into the software that we are then giving to our customers. And as the customers, then watching out what we are bringing into the network and looking at every aspect. Not saying that this is easy, however, it has to be done, right? And the best way to come around it is a list of software that we are using, where we are using it, and finding the connections to where this software can lead to, and then finding the right mitigation and let's say it like this, security measures in order that a user from software A cannot reach software B if it's not his point of concern.
Yeah, and you mentioned hardware there, which obviously Synopsys also has a lot of experience in. And on that side of the business, you guys recently announced DSO.ai, becoming one of the first companies to use AI to design chips. Are you using AI on the software security side in any such innovative ways?
So as for AI, I know that this is a term that is always used wherever you go today, right? So everybody tries to use the vast majority of processing power that we have today. And also, for example, in our software, we are using AI in order to help customers with, let's say it like this, their tasks, right? If I just take in the point our Black Duck security product for open source components, right? Identifying open source components and everything. There is also AI in the whole process of gathering open source information, of putting it together, of finding the right way to identify open source components in projects that customers use, right? So AI is, of course, the thing that everybody wants to use as it's for the better.
Yeah. And so on the other side, are you confident that the industry at large will be able to keep up with offensive AI threats as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as always, cyber criminals will be a step ahead of us, right? This is just the point because they will find a loophole that is there, right? This is what they're searching for, and unfortunately, many times they're finding it faster than we are, right? And this is why it's a threat. However, I believe that if we use, let's say it like this, best practices at our advantage, then those loopholes will be really small, and cyber attacks will not have that large reach as they are having today, right? Starting with the processes, many times cyber attacks are able because somebody just forgot to configure the container that was put in production on a safe environment, or tended to wrong security measures, right? If already this process would be tended to, many of the cyber attacks today would not be possible, because the attacker would not get his hands on usernames and passwords like admin and such things, right? So from that perspective, not only AI or new technology is needed in the future, but just basic cyber hygiene.
And in your view, what do you think has made Synopsys the leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for application security testing for the 5th consecutive year?
Yeah, I believe that it's the uh, let's say it like this, the vision that our management already a few years ago wanted to uh, go after. And this was the point that, as our CEO said once, we achieved integrity on the chips, right? Now we have to focus on the software that is running on these chips, that the integrity of this software is also okay, right? That it's good. And therefore, they started to focus on how to secure the software, how to make it possible that the software is really good. And therefore they started to buy in many companies that allow this, like SAST technology, like SCA technology, EAST technology, and so on, that make out a great portfolio to help every company not only to have this one button tool that will make everything disappear, every problem disappear, and this doesn't work, right? Into a more DevSecOps way of working, right? Putting the right tool at the right place in order for the right people to find out about vulnerabilities at the right time in order to repair them. And this makes, I think, our application security portfolio so good and complete that basically Gartner then recognized it already for the 5th year in a row.
One of the most interesting things you introduced recently was the your intelligent orchestration solution. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically, as I said, you can have a large portfolio of tools, right? However, the point is not about buying tools and putting them somewhere, right? You have to also use them. You have to know when to use what in order to achieve the results that fit you best in the given moment, right? And this is what intelligent orchestration will give you, right? Running a pipeline next to your pipeline that will give you results with policies that define gateways and will do real testing at the time when you need it and present you with the results that you need at that time in order to progress from one stage to the other. And those are the stages that then help you to make sure that you are not, for example, as I like to say, introduce a simple SQL injection from inception until the launch in one large pipeline, right? How can it happen that such a small thing can go through every step of your development? And this is actually what intelligent orchestration should do, getting the noise out of everything, setting up right policies, right stages, and progressing your software from one stage to the other with the right results and right data.
And speaking of pipelines, is there anything particularly interesting upcoming that you can tell us about?
One of the interesting things that happened recently was our acquisition of CodeDX. CodeDX is a consolidation and triaging tool, if I may simplify the message like this, right? I'm sure that I now totally generalized the message around this, but it's actually also this, right? You have now many tools that you have to gather results from and decide what you will focus on first, right? And if you have 10,000 of problems, which is normal many times, you have to focus on the right things in order to get this 10,000 list done, right? And CodeDX, for example, helps you with this so that you can do all the steps in your pipeline, all the testing in your pipeline, and still come to a workable set of problems that you can work on. And one thing that is good is CodeDX has also its own AI inbuilt, which then selects the vulnerabilities that are mostly vulnerable, mostly exploitable, and can help you then to keep your software the safest possible.
Well, my next question was going to be what CodeDX brings to the table. So you've already covered that one. I'll skip that one.
Sorry about
this. So a recent sample of 1,000 DevOps and IT security professionals found that 48% believe development teams are responsible for security, and equal 48% say their IT teams are. To help end the debate, which team do you think is responsible?
That's the biggest question that we have always, right? It's always somebody else's fault. But I would say that none of those teams are responsible by themselves. Every company has to put these teams together to work as one team then in the end, right? It's not one development team, one security team. If you just look at the point of you have maybe 100 developers, but 5 security guys, right? And then you have an IT team that has their own way of defining why their budget will be spent, on what it will be spent, how it will be spent, right? So everybody of them has tasks. And now we have to put a general view on how those tasks will form one output, right? So if I look now at the development team, their focus is on developing features, functionalities, something that satisfies me as the user, right? So they are not focused on security. However, if we teach security people, teach developers how to become security aware, then they will focus on this also. However, you cannot expect that a developer will be able to do this without tools that will tell them, hey, watch out, there you have maybe developed a vulnerability into the code, even if you did not want it. Then the security team can also not do everything by themselves. As I said, they are just too small in comparison to the development team that can output a large amount of code, right? And then every time you have this battle of, oh, the security team again stopped something because we don't have this, and then you have these problems. And the IT team, they just need to make sure that everything runs, that the developers have their tools, security has their tools, that everything is in production and running. However, now the big problem is to get this DevOps into a DevSecOps, that really security is implemented in every step of the DevOps loop, right? And for this, I always say that the responsibility cannot lie at the development team, security team, or anybody else that is just a part of this DevOps, but has to lie high up in the management structure. It has to be a CTO who has the clear vision and view on what he wants to achieve, what kind of products does he want to deliver to the world, and then define stages, of course, together with those teams, that he defines the rules on which those teams will then play on and will provide then outcomes that every team can take into use.
That's an excellent answer. And finally, you'll be speaking at the Cybersecurity and Cloud Expo Global next month, of which Synopsys is a key partner. What can attendees expect?
Well, I hope expert in cybersecurity. That's one thing, and I believe that, or I hope that there will be also others that want to just learn what is out there and how to improve. Right? For example, you mentioned in the beginning that I am in the malware business. Let's say it like this. I started with this, and if you see how malware evolved, what kind of points it went through to get to those attacks that we see today, then you understand what is basically important in the points. And when you see that a lot of software is today delivered vulnerable, then you question yourself, okay, where is the problem of this whole supply chain attacks, right? And I hope that every attendee will get his share of knowledge so that they can improve on their side to make this harder for the cyber criminals.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for speaking to us today, Boris. We look forward to speaking to you soon, and I look forward to watching your presentation next month.
Thank you very much. Me too.